Welcome to another episode of Comedy Wham Presents with me, your host, Valerie, and sometime co-host, Miss Purrington, who's back. ComedyWham.com is your place to go for features about all Austin comedy. You can keep up with us on Twitter and Instagram at Comedy Wham or on our Comedy Wham Facebook page. Please rate and review us on iTunes if you are listening to this podcast. In addition to podcasts, Comedy Wham brings you articles, album reviews, a calendar of Austin shows, and live shows featuring the best in Austin comedy in all its shapes and formats. Launched in 2016, the Podcast Project brings you funny people and their stories. As a fan, I like to delve into a comic's background and motivations, and will usually take a detour along the way. Consider the interview a way for you to get to know the folks that make the Austin comedy scene one of the best in the country. Today, I kid you not, I had written this, and she walked in with something just as good. I'd written that she's a really wholesome personality, and I half expected her to bring in like a made-from-scratch apple pie. She brought me made-from-scratch pasta. So she wins everything. And clue in to future guests. Bring me things. But then again, some of her jokes have to do with things like, Jesus level wasted, or Googling ISIS. And you have seen her perform at all of the usual showcases in Austin. Mm-hmm. She is the host of one of the best open mics where comics, you're supposed to bring in something brand new every week. You know the rules. And it's Playpen at Fallout Theater. And although it is way past my bedtime, I've been hearing such great buzz about her newest show that she created, produces, and hosts called After Party. And I need somebody to invent a caffeine IV so that I can stay up and watch this show. I've heard so many great things about it. Now Comedy Wham presents our guest, Megan Tucei. Hello!
Thank you so much for having me. What a great intro. I love it.
And this is your first podcast ever?
This is my first podcast ever, so hopefully I don't screw it up. We'll see.
I mean, this is talking about yourself, so you know that subject the best.
Yeah. And you saying nice things about me, which is great.
Yes, I very rarely talk trash about people, although...
To their face.
Yes.
You talk behind my back all day. I don't care. As long as I don't hear it, it's fine.
Yeah. I remember when, this is kind of a weird way to start off. We'll get to my icebreaker question. But I remember it's probably about 3 years ago, for whatever reason, I decided I was going to start doing open mics. And I would see you on stage and you just, you've always come off as like, it's very nice, prim, proper personality, but your jokes would kind of surprise us. They weren't raunchy, but they touched on things that you wouldn't necessarily expect.
Yes, yeah.
And I, kind of dropped off for a bit, but I've seen the things that have been happening for you over the last, 6 to 12 months. Yeah. And I'm like, this is so exciting to watch, everything start to come together.
Yeah.
And because, sometimes you take things for granted, like, a cat being home. And you realize, oh my gosh, I need to talk to this person because things are starting to really hit. And the shows that the after party in particular we'll talk about.
Yes.
And it's, you realize I need to be talking to this person and get their background. So I'm so glad that, I clued in to, okay.
I'm so honored to be asked to be on this. I feel like this is one of those, benchmark moments.
Oh.
So this is awesome for me.
Well, thank you for considering it that much. Okay. Your icebreaker question.
Yes.
One word to describe your past.
I'm going to go with unique.
Okay.
I grew up in 3 different states. I was born in Texas. Okay. When I was in kindergarten, my family, we moved to the Bay Area, to the San Francisco suburbs. Okay. We lived there for 10 years. And then when I was a freshman in high school, the middle of my freshman year of high school, we moved from California to Connecticut.
Oh,
and all these moves were for my mom's job. So my mom was actually the breadwinner. And once we moved from Texas to California, my dad ended up being the stay-at-home parent. So my dad stayed at home and he raised me and my 3 siblings. I'm the youngest of 4. So I've sort of seen a lot. I've experienced a lot of different areas of the country. I've experienced some horrible moves. The one in kindergarten was fine. That was easy.
Yeah.
The high school one was bad.
That's such, like, okay, so I have a 13-year-old,
Yes.
and I'm very mindful that we're planted until he
Yes.
graduates from
Yeah.
high school. And
Yeah.
the Army brat story, they move often enough that they learn a lot of great things from that. But when it's just, you've been stable, and then
Yeah.
right at that, like, pivotal teenage year.
Yes. Yes.
Oof.
And girls are the worst. I mean, high school girls, they just, yeah. And that was one of those things when I was in high school, everybody had sort of grown up together and they knew each other from when they were little. So they had these friendship bonds that were, a decade old. And I sort of came in, and it's girls in high school and anyways can get side of catty and clicky. And it was just
the California girl.
Yeah. And they're like, is it like the OC? And I was like, no. And then they just were not interested in me at all. I was like, I was nowhere near a beach. And they're like, well then, you bring nothing to the table. But no, I ended up finding a group of friends, but I never really felt like I fit in until, I went to college. So that was sort of where, cause I was always very shy too. And I still am to this day, which is funny because people don't consider people who do stand up to be shy. But I'm like, well, you don't talk back to me. So I'm in control of the conversation, at least to a certain extent. So, that's why I wouldn't be good at improv. But, yeah. So I think once I got to college, it was more, everybody was new. Mm-hmm. And that's when I really started coming out of my shell and sort of turning into myself to a certain extent. And, at that point, that's when I started realizing like humor and like what was funny and that I could be funny and all that kind of stuff. Cause before that, I was just like very self-conscious, very shy, very, who am I going to have lunch with? What's everybody doing without me? So,
So if it was college that you started discovering comedy, your own sense of humor, were there any comedic memories from your growing up before college?
Not necessarily. That's around the time that it started. I very specifically remember being in the car with my parents and two of my siblings, and my mom is a very proper person. She went to a boarding school in France run by nuns, very, very proper. And I remember we were talking about someone or something, and my mom referred to someone as a floozy. And, I said, what's a floozy? And she said, I'm not going to tell you. And I was like, oh, it's fine. I'll just Google it. How do you spell floozy? And my siblings were cracking up. And so I just kept on sort of going with it. And, it became this first moment where I was like, oh, I can make people laugh. I'm also the youngest of four. So to sort of get my voice noticed, that's when I realized like, oh, this is where I can get attention in this family. Not that I wasn't getting it. I was getting plenty, but obviously I needed more apparently. And so, I started with that. And then, in college, I think just I think about my friends from college now and I look back and all of my friends from college are just really funny people in their own way. Some, some don't know it, some do, but, I learned a lot from them. And then, so when I was in college, I majored in communications and I had a minor in sociology and another minor in film studies.
Okay.
And the film studies, it was a certificate because there aren't film studies courses. So I was taking a music class and a communications class. So it's really a minor anyways. And one of the classes I took was a screenwriting class because it was good for communications and for this film studies. It was like two birds, one stone. So I was like, I'll just take this class. That seems easy enough. And I ended up falling in love with with screenwriting. And I really enjoyed it. So then the next semester I took an advanced screenwriting course and my professor nominated my, movie that I'd written for an award at the school. I went to the University of Massachusetts and, I ended up winning it.
Oh my gosh.
Which was, and which was crazy because I wrote a comedy and the second and third place person, they had this whole award thing where you had to present your thing, and the person in second and third place both made actual movies, and they were very serious. One of them was about like a miscarriage, and then, it's time for me to come up, and I have this very silly, and I was just like, oh man. But, yeah, so that's when I was like, okay, this is something, it sort of gave me the validation that I was like, okay, I like writing. Mm-hmm. I can be funny in my writing too. This is something that I really like. So I graduated college and I was like, well, I'm just going to be a screenwriter. And
naturally,
obviously,
I won this award.
That did not happen. Yeah. It's been a frustrating process because I graduated and then I started submitting to national contests, and I was a finalist in every single contest that I entered. But it's the system, so many people steal other people's ideas. Mm. So it's very hard to get representation without having already been established. And it's very hard to establish yourself without representation. So It's kind of this tough back and forth of how do you, and at the time I wasn't in a place where I was going to make my own movie because I had just graduated college and I had no idea. So I was still writing, and then I ended up taking a break at some point, and then I had the idea.
When you graduated, did you stay in Massachusetts?
No.
Okay.
I moved back home and I lived with my parents
back home
to Connecticut.
Okay.
Yes. So I moved back to Connecticut and I lived with my parents for 5 years. And then I moved, and then I had this thought of, oh, you know what? I could do stand up. Maybe I could try out stand up, because then at least people are legally allowed to see what I'm doing. And then it's up to the audience, and it's not up to some old white guy who's running, a film thing who knows nothing about what's cool now and is just remaking Spider-Man for the 18th time. So, I ended up deciding, and I was in the suburbs of New York City. So I ended up deciding that I was going to move to Texas instead of to New York City. I was finally going to move out of my parents' house. It was cushy. I loved it there. My dad was still taking care of me. Aww. I compare it to living at an all-inclusive resort for free. It's why, and they did it on purpose. They wanted us to stay as long as we wanted. The 2 dogs, everything. It was everything I could ever want. But I was 27 and I was almost 27 and I needed to get out of there. So, so I had a sister. One of my sisters had moved down here. And so I ended up moving
Specifically Austin?
Specifically Austin. And so I ended up moving down to Austin. And once I got settled, I was like, okay, I'm going to try out comedy now. This is the place to do it, which I know seems backwards because I was already so close to New York City, but I think it was a good start for me for sure.
Yeah. Did you do any comedy in New York since you were so close?
No, never. I did. So I was about an hour and 15-minute train ride. The town that I lived in was just a commuter town to New York City. If you wanted to have a house and a yard, you lived there. And so I did Gotham Comedy Club does have comedy classes. So I'd signed up for their comedy classes. And I went to the first one, and the guy was very intense, and he was like, you need to be going to open mics every night. And if you don't between now and next week's class, I'm going to know and I'm going to call you out on it. And I was just like, oh my gosh. Cause I was working until 6:30 at night. So by the time I would get into the city, it would be closer to 8. And then by the time I got off on stage, it would be closer to 10. And I'm just, a young girl in the city who's unfamiliar with it. And then I would have to take the train back. And then I have to be up at 6:15 in the morning to go to work again. And so it was unfeasible at that point for me. And it was a bit scary. And so
But did you do it? Cause this is one of my observations is you seem like the rule follower, especially if your mom was this very, she probably instituted rules of the house.
Oh,
yes.
Yes.
So did you actually do it though? Did you try to do it? Or did you just realize I can't?
I was just like, This teacher in particular was very intense, which was not, I was like, he scared me. And so I was just like, I'm not going back to this. And I called it a wash, which was a waste of money. And I was like, this is not good. But so then I got here, and after about 9 months here, I was like, okay, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it for real this time. I don't have any excuses. This needs to have, I have the time.
Yeah.
And so I ended up signing up for the comedy class. I know everybody always gives comedy classes they always, and I'm like, well, I'm signed up for 2 of them. So I signed, but for me, it's more of a comfort thing. So I signed up for the one that they have at the institution before Valerie was teaching it. And I did that, and I thought it was helpful because for me it was nice to know about the light, for especially for Playpen. I get new people all the time. And so I'm like, okay, we give you a light when you have 1 minute left on stage. It's coming from here, but a lot of times people still don't even realize what's going on. And so I think it was nice to know about the light. It was nice to have Jacqueline Leona and Justin Swallow, if you're familiar with them, they took the class with me. Justin's moved to LA now, but he still does comedy, and Jacqueline still does it here in Austin. And then we also had another friend, Tony, who was doing it for us for a little while after. So it was nice to show up to the open mics and have people that I already knew, because it feels like high school again, like when I moved. So when I show up to an open mic and I don't know anyone, even to this day, I went to an open mic the other day and I was like, I don't know who any of these people are. And it feels so weird for me. And I'm just like, it gives me flashbacks. I'm like, oh gosh, I'm back in high school. Who am I going to have lunch with? I'm just going to sit. So, I needed that for myself, just to like give me that motivation. And cause then also when you're bombing and you're going last on the list, and it's like, part of you's like, oh gosh, am I ever going to get this? Do I want to do this again? But it's nice to have that support system that's like, hey, we're going to go out tonight. Let's do it. Let's do this one. So, I'm thankful for Jacqueline and Justin and Tony, because if it weren't for them, I would probably have been like, oh, I'm bad at this. And I'm just sitting in a corner by myself. So, yeah. Yeah,
because you're not the young 20-something dude.
No.
Who's doing the open mics.
Yeah. I got plenty of creepy guys coming up to talk to me, but that was the last thing that I wanted. And so it was also nice to have those friends around you.
Yes. Protective shield.
Yeah, because if you're by yourself, they'll come up to you. But if you're with other people, they'll generally leave you alone. So that part. I really just needed security.
I never had that problem, because they're just like, oh, it's somebody's grandma here.
I don't know. Some of these people.
Okay. So how long ago was it that you moved to Austin?
I moved to Austin in almost 4 years ago.
Okay. And the primary reason was your sister was here and you wanted to get away. Did you know anything about the comedy scene?
No, not at all. Yeah, the primary reason was because it's cheap here. That's my sister was an added bonus, obviously. So I already had someone here. Yeah. And so that was, and my mom went to UT and my dad is from Mississippi. And so I also knew that my parents were close to retiring, and I had a sister at the time who lived in San Francisco, and my brother was living in New York City. And I knew that if I moved here, that my parents would retire here.
Very strategic.
And that's exactly what happened. So I like to think that I have a lot of pull in my family, which I do not, but yeah, my parents ended up retiring here, an hour south in Canyon Lake about 6 months after I moved here. So
great.
Yeah. So it worked out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
and I almost thought about putting this in the introduction, of you, because you are world traveled. So you just got back from a trip with your mom that looked phenomenal.
Yeah. When you asked me to be on this podcast, I was in Thailand.
And I realized that after a point, I'm like, oh my God, please stop writing me back.
No, No, it's fine. It was fun. We were having
Your
a good time.
Instagram feed, I'm like, oh, okay, Rome. And then I don't know. I can't keep track of all the places, but this last trip, I'm like, oh my God, this is stunning.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
Yeah.
It was gorgeous.
And the perspective that you get from getting outside of your little, area is great.
Yeah. It's always interesting. What's funny is I do travel a lot, both for work and for fun. Mm-hmm. And whenever I go somewhere, people are like, oh, did you do any mics there? And I'm like, in Thailand? Yeah. No. Also, like, if San Francisco, I'm like, no, I'm on vacation to get away from this. It's my break. Not that I don't love comedy, but sometimes you just need to take, like, if I'm on vacation, I'm on vacation. Yeah. I'm not going up at an open mic. Yeah. So, yeah.
I travel for work. Well, I also travel a lot. And for a while, I was, anytime that I would be traveling for work where I knew in the evenings I'd have free time. Mm-hmm. It is almost as much work trying to find, like, find the calendar that has all of the available open mics, and then B, trying to figure out, is this going to fit with your schedule? Yeah. And then how do you get to this place? Yeah. It's almost as much work, if not more work, than actually working on your 2-minute set.
Yeah, exactly. So, exactly. And well, the other thing is that, if I'm going to visit one of my siblings or one of my friends and I go to an open mic, they're going to want to come. And if it's, if I bomb, it's the last thing that I need them seeing me. Looks like vacation ruined. Why would I, I don't want you to come out and watch me bomb. And I travel, my mom and I will do a trip every once in a while together because she loves traveling. She's been to over 100 countries. And so, and she is, comedy is not her thing necessarily. Yeah. Not that she doesn't like to laugh, but, so I'm clearly not going to be dragging her around to open mics either. Right. So, it is always funny though. People are like, oh, you didn't do comedy in Italy? I'm like, no.
How would that even work?
No, I did not.
Are you kidding me? There's so much pasta to be had.
I know. I drank wine. Yeah. There's a lot of history there. Yeah. There's other things to do. Right. Yeah.
So stand-up is going really, really well for you. Do you have anything in the back of your mind about the screenwriting thing? Because you were doing so great with it, and then I feel like the sense I got is you got burned by it.
I did. I sort of got where I felt like I was at a dead end and I wasn't sure what else I could really do with it. And so the great thing about comedy is I think it's been great. I haven't started writing again, but I've started getting these ideas and jotting them down and trying to come up with like basically the start of something new, like getting my characters developed and getting the storyline sort of thought out. And I think the great thing about stand-up comedy is you get instant feedback. Whereas if you write something and it's made and you go through this whole several months to years and you can make it and it can not be good. Right. It can not be funny. So I think stand-up has really taught me what's funny, what is not funny. Mm-hmm. And so in the last 6 months or so, I've gotten this itch to start writing again and to get in, just to write something. And so then I look back at my other things. I'm like, oh, this was horrible. This is, this won an award. What were they thinking? That miscarriage thing, much better. So yeah, I've definitely gotten this and then I watch shows that I like and I pick up on things from that. And, that's really comedy too. I do a lot of, After Party is based off of this too. I'm very observational. So when I had started comedy, I would, a lot of people go to open mics and then they'll go and have a cigarette or talk to their friends until it's their turn. Mm-hmm. And I do that sometimes now. But when I had started, I would watch everybody before me and I would figure out why their jokes were working. Uh-huh. And then I got to a point where I was like, okay, why is this person's joke not working? Why do they seem awkward on stage? Mm-hmm. And so it's still something that I do. I watch people and I figure out, what is working with them and what's not working and why does this work? Why does it not work? And so, that helped me in the beginning to sort of develop and become better at writing and better at performing. Mm-hmm. And, Yeah, so that's what I do now with the screenwriting. I watch The Office, which I love, and I figure out, oh, it's because they have a lot of quirky characters, and so you sort of pick up on those things. Yeah.
And does the gate stop at screenwriting, or do you ever foresee, now that you're getting back into it a little bit, do you ever foresee like going beyond that into actual production and creation of whatever it is that you have written?
I have no plan and no, and not that I'm like, but I have no set, like, this is what it's going to be, this is what it's not going to be. I'm very open to anything and everything. Yeah. I think that, between comedy and writing, there's a lot of skills in general. And so whatever, I'm not going to say no to anything or count anything out in general as something that I would or would not do. Yeah. So, yeah, I think that's important too, is a lot of people sometimes are very focused on, I'm pursuing a career in stand-up, and it's like, you're funny. You can do a lot of different things. Right. So, yeah. As
somebody who throughout high school and until you found your crew in college, and then moving back into Austin and starting the stand-up, for some reason I feel like you would be a really good person to hear this either advice or perspective from. But how do you navigate that feeling like the outsider for a long time until finally feeling a sense of acceptance and belonging in this comedy community?
Yeah. I think it's something that I never forget. So, when new people come to Playpen, I always try to make sure they feel welcome. And I always try to, help them navigate it and be like, hey, this is where the light's going to come from. This is what it means. So when you go to other mics, that's what they're trying to tell you. If I see someone, I always try to make sure I say hi to them and get to know them at least a little bit in some way. I think, we're all adults now. I guess I'm a little older than some people, but, it's just sort of understanding I've been in that position. So it's being what did I appreciate that people did for me? When I first started, I actually went to Playpen, and I remember Nikita being like, oh, I really liked your story or whatever. And, you should go to Last Gas, which is now Comedy Wham.
That's right,
and, check out where all the mics are. And Cherrywood is also tonight, and it's over here. And if you leave now, you can get there. So I think about that, and I try to do that for other people, and always, getting to know people and.
Okay. So there's two camps, and I hate to make this a gender distinction, but it seems like my male guests will say, well, that's just the way it is. Those first few months, first year, nobody's going to talk to you. Yeah. And then you yourself, and then you bring up Nikita. It's like, oh, there was always somebody who's telling me the nice things, who's telling me where to find out more, and, giving me little coaching tips.
Yeah. I think women in Austin comedy are always looking out for each other. There's so few of us, and there's so many creeps. Yeah. And the thing about the creeps is they're never people that you rarely see booked on shows. People are like, who are the creepiest people? I'm like, you wouldn't even know who they are. Yeah. So, which is good because once a creep is picked out, then they're gone. So at least, everyone's taking care of them. But, I think there's so few of us, and if you're left alone, you're a target. So we know to sort of watch out for each other, and everybody, even people who I don't really know that well, you can, be in an open mic, and it's just, you have this sort of bond, you feel like, because there's only two of you there. Right. So, so I'll look out for any new person, but especially a woman. I'll try to make sure that they feel welcome and like they have a safe place to be. So,
So was Playpen one of the mics that you religiously went to?
Yes. Okay. Yes. I loved the concept of Playpen because when I had first started, saying a new joke was always cause, you'll go to an open mic and you'll be after someone who's been working on this joke for a month and it kills. And then if I go up and I'm saying this joke for the first time and I'm nervous about it, and I feel a little differently about new jokes now. But when I had started, it was like, I like that it was an even playing field. We're all doing a brand new joke tonight, which since I've taken over, I've realized some people cheat. But
you've just realized this?
I have threatened people that I will get on the ghost mic at Playpen and finish their joke for them if they keep on saying it, because I'm like, you've said this for the last 4 weeks here. If you do it again, I'm coming out. I'm gonna tell the punchline for you. So, I do appreciate that it's supposedly an even playing field. And I do start every show with saying that some people cheat. So if you hear something that's wonderful, it's probably not brand new. But yeah, I really liked Playpen. I like that it's smaller and it was run by Nikita and Elizabeth, who immediately off the bat made me feel welcome. And it's a short, since it's smaller and it's shorter, you don't have to wait 2 hours for your turn. So if you get on, you'll be out of there within an hour or so. So that's what I always liked and always appreciated. And it was nice seeing other people. Again, I like watching people. So it was nice seeing other people develop their jokes and see what they had brought to the table that was brand new and how and then to see them develop from there and how they tweak it, then go to see them at Cherrywood or see them at Kickbutt and see what they changed about the joke. I think that was really helpful with me in figuring out how to write and how to change things or develop a joke better from the beginning. So, yeah.
And you were handed the keys from Elizabeth about, is it a year and a half?
It will be a year in April. Okay. But I'd sort of been her backup person for a while. So I'd been covering for her every once in a while when she needed someone to take over when she couldn't be there. So I had already felt pretty comfortable in that position, and it was nice to do.
And at that point, you weren't hosting anything else.
No.
So what kind of things did you learn by being the host as opposed to, the open micer, the showcaser? Yeah.
It's interesting because a lot of people talk about how it's good to have hosting experience. And I always thought, you go up, you do a set up top, and then you say people's names. What do you mean? It's not that hard. I don't understand why everybody makes a big deal out of it. But I understand now going in to a cold audience, because I bomb almost every week on my show. It's a lot of fun. I go in, but it's also good going in not expecting anything. And when I get a laugh, it's a nice, but yeah, I try to write a new joke every week for my show. I try to live to my own rules. So I try my hardest to write a new joke every week for the show. And, sometimes I go in and I'm like, well, I know this isn't going to be a good one. And, but I do understand the whole how to warm up an audience, what you need, they're coming in, they're there for comedy, but they have to also get into that mindset. So it's definitely taught me how to get an audience ready and what you need to do. And I'm still learning with that too. I mean, it's sometimes you have a very reluctant audience who paid to be there, but somehow do not want to be there.
It's like they want to do the water torture. It's like, I'm going to go here because I just want to see if I can not laugh the entire hour.
So it's also, I've been able to work on, and it's nice because Playpen I can do however much up top that I want. So I can I don't have to worry about how much time I'm taking up, and I can work on something new and also banter with the audience a little, which I've learned is a great way to warm them up. And, it's definitely taught me a lot that I didn't think needed to be taught. I just thought it was very straightforward, and it's definitely not. You have to sort of see where they're sitting, and you can comment on that, and everyone's spread out, or everyone's I'm sure there's still plenty for me to learn.
Okay, so then how does this germ of the idea that you're very observational, you've watched the comics come through Playpen and then watching them at other open mics and shows, and then how do you get this after party concept started and now it's a regular recurring show.
Yes.
Because if memory serves, I'm going to try to impress you with my trivia.
Ooh.
If memory serves, you got this as one of the late night Velve shows, the Friday night 11:30 slot, as like an experimental show. And now it's a monthly show at the Fallout.
Mm-hmm. It is, yeah.
So how did the germ of the idea come to you?
Okay, so really going back to college. When I was in college, my friends and I would play drinking games based off things that people would do or say. So sometimes it would be within our group of friends and we all knew what the person's thing was. And sometimes it was, someone who came to meet up with us and we're like, I remember one specific person and he always had a tendency to say everybody's full name. He wouldn't just say Megan. He would say Megan Tucei. And so we would make a game out of him for the night that every time he said someone's full name, you take a drink. And so we got drunk very quickly and it was fun. And so when I had started comedy and I was watching other people and I was picking up on certain things, I had this idea of, wouldn't it be fun to make a drinking game out of this, which so I had that early on and I specifically remember telling Michael Priest about it and he said, that's a really good idea. And I sat on it for a while because I didn't feel ready. I had the idea and I had the concept, but I knew that I wasn't there yet to be in charge of an entire show, let alone at that point, I wasn't even funny yet. So I was waiting for the right moment. Yeah. And then, actually Pat had posted something on Facebook. It was probably around a year ago saying, hey, I'm looking for ideas for pop-up shows on Fridays. If you have them, send me a message. So I told him about my idea and we ended up meeting up to talk about it. And he specifically said, Pat is great and he always gives women opportunities. He really tries to look out for us. And he said that he read it and he was like, thank God it's good. Because, to say no, to say he didn't want to have to say no. Yeah. So he was nice enough to let me do my show there 2 times, I want to say. And then I had taken over Playpen for Elizabeth at Fallout. And at that point, and Pat had said, I really like the idea. I can put it on every, few months, but it's not, the only recurring show he has is Low and Inside. So he can make more room for other people to put their ideas on, which is great. And it's and to be able to let people do it in such a popular, great room is awesome. Yeah. So I reached out to Fallout and I was like, hey, I had this idea. Would you guys be interested? And they're like, oh, hey, we just opened up these super late shows. I was like, great. Thank you. So, and my first one.
This is payback for not doing those late New York.
I know. And so I want to say my first show was during ACL weekend and my second show was Halloween weekend. And that one I actually think I had to cancel because just we had 4 audience members come and I was just so like, oh man, this is so embarrassing. But since then I've been able to get a good amount of people to come. So, the last show we had like 30 people, which at Fallout at 11:30.
Yeah, that's good.
I'm like, so happy with. That's all. I'm like, even if 15 people were there, I would be happy. Just people. So, it's starting to pick up steam, but it has a drinking game for the audience, which I'm not allowed to advertise legally. So that's another little hurdle with it. But, it's been fun. It's a lot of fun and a lot of the comics seem really, it's a little bit different and they're excited to do it and they're excited to see what their thing is. Yeah. And I actually, this last month I had Derek Copswell on it and I was like, just to let you know, I haven't figured out what your thing is yet. So, there's generic ones, like whenever somebody says, or like, or everybody does it. Yeah. So it's an easy way to just get anybody on there if I need to. And Derek said, no, I don't want one of those.
He wants you to work at it.
He was like, I want a real one. And I was like, okay. So I did end up picking out his thing and I figured it out. So, but it was nice for him to challenge me like that because I could have easily just been like, oh, his is whenever he says I, and something like that. And so, it was good, but yeah.
So our anniversary episode was talking to Marcus Wilson. So
Yes.
he's not the comic, but he knows all of the shows. He knows everybody in the scene. Everybody loves Marcus.
Oh, yeah.
And I was asking him, so what are the hot new shows that you're excited about and the ones that you really like a lot? And After Party came up.
Oh.
And he said, and I told him, unfortunately I haven't been able to stay up this late to be able to go see it, but I really want to. I see some of the clips, that you post or that others post with, the background screen that the comics have their back to, with their towels. And he said, what I found really interesting about that show is I will see a comic perform on that show, and then I'll notice that when they perform, they've either scaled back on the thing, or stopped the thing altogether because they didn't realize the thing that they did.
It is very funny. A lot of comics will be like, I don't do that, and I'm like, I have it on video. You do it. Trust me. And who was it? Hunter. I had Hunter on one month, and his was, he touches his nose a lot.
Yeah.
And, he had someone there with him, and he was like, I touch my nose a lot. I do that. I did. And we were like, you do it a lot. And, and so I didn't get to see him do his Comedy Central thing, but I'm like, you're welcome. Hunter, I'm not taking any credit for any of yours, but it is good to know what your thing is, because when I had Derek, Holly came with Derek, and someone in the green room was like, well, what's your thing? And I said, I say like a lot, even in regular. I'm sure now that I've pointed it out on this podcast, everybody's going to notice, but I say like a lot. And Holly goes, you look up a lot. And I was like, oh, what? I was like, this is about you guys. We're not. But yeah, I try to keep them nice too. I'm not gonna make
they scratch their balls all the time.
Every time they bomb. So but it is. I hope that it's helpful, and if not, it's at the very least fun.
Right.
And so, and it's fun for me, and it's fun for everybody, because all the other comics are like peeking and trying to see what the person's thing is, and they're like, oh, they do that. And
and nobody's gonna accept to be on the show unless they're willing to.
And it's all in fun, and it's never anything crazy. But like Scott Sticker, before every show, he wants to know who's on it and what their thing is. So Scott Sticker always has the end. I always let him know. And he'll be like, oh, that's a good one. And so it's fun. It's good.
Yeah. When I started understanding the concept of it, to me, it made so much sense that this was your show. And it had, I don't know if you know anything about Toastmasters.
I've heard of Toastmasters a little. I know a little bit about it.
So one of the things with Toastmasters, it's a public speaking organization. You learn by doing speeches, and you get better at public speaking. But part of the continuous feedback cycle is after each speech, you have somebody who gives you an evaluation.
Oof.
And the goal is, after that evaluation, you process the information and then you get better for the next. And to me, this concept was like, oh, this is like a really soft white glove treatment of Toastmasters, where if somebody isn't aware that they have a thing, they can choose whether or not they ditch it, if it's a distraction, or if, they embrace it. But it's kind of like, oh, I'm sharing this feedback to you in a very positive, fun manner, and you do what you want with it. And I don't know that anybody could just pull that off. We could probably come up with a handful of names where we thought them as a host would be atrocious for this concept of a show.
Well, and I don't even necessarily do it because I think people need to change these things. Some of them it's yours. I don't care what you do.
Yeah.
So you're good enough to be on the show.
Yeah.
So you're clearly a good comic. You don't need my personal feedback on anything. I just do it so it's a drinking game for the audience. I mean, it's something different for the audience. It's something different for the comics, and it's something that they can play off of, because when the comics go up, they're doing their set and there's a screen behind them and they have no idea when the audience is drinking or why they're drinking. And so it becomes this little game between them. And because some people just drink when they want to drink, and some people will play the game. And so they're like, oh, is it every time I touch my elbow? And it's like, what? And it becomes, it can be, the game in itself is also just really funny and fun for everybody. Right. So it adds this another layer to the show, rather than they're going to come up here and they're going to tell you jokes. It's, there's a lot of participation on both sides, and you're both in on this game. But one of you knows it, one of you doesn't.
It's such a fun concept. I need to just commit to staying up super late.
I know, it's tough. It is tough. And even, it's Friday night, so I'll get out of work and I'm like, oh
yeah, full day's work.
I'm like, well, I have 5 hours until this show starts. What am I going to do? I'm getting laundry done. I'm doing all these things. And so,
you take a nap at a certain point. You realize, okay, I got to budget a nap from 7 to 8:30, and then.
Yeah. So
screw the sleep cycle.
Yeah, exactly. I just throw myself off. So yeah.
Are you the type of person that you've got this great concept and this show that's starting to hit its stride? Are you the type of person that wants to exercise more of that creativity and come up with more shows, or are you this is where I can throw all of my energies and be content?
So, I have the weekly open mic right now, which really I don't do. I show up. I tell people if they're on or not, and I show up. So that doesn't take tons.
You read the emails, okay? Because you have to submit by an email first.
Yes. So I read the emails and I decide who's going up, and then I get, all the last minute requests.
Yeah.
And, but that's one of those things where people put themselves on the list. I don't have to order people, so I'm not playing favoritism other than who I let on the show or not. Yeah. So that doesn't take up tons of my energy. After party, it's sort of like the 2 weeks leading up to it. That takes up, the advertising and the trying to get the upvotes on Do 512 and making sure the audience shows up. That does take a lot of my time. And if I had another concept that I really liked, I wouldn't be against doing another show. I'm not going to do something just to do something. So if I had something cool that was different that I thought would be fun, I would 100% do it. But it just hasn't come to me yet, I guess. Yeah. So we'll see. Again, always open. Never say no.
That's true. You got to try everything.
Exactly.
Almost everything.
Yeah.
So what do you hope for? Because this is still early 2020 when this comes out. What are you hoping for 2020 for yourself?
For 2020, I think I'm hoping to headline a show in 2020, just some sort of show. I feel like I'm ready for it. I have enough material to do it that works, that I like. And the other problem is that I'll have jokes and I'm like, I don't like it anyway. Which is part of the writing process. It's part of growing. You get better at writing and you understand, and then you're like, oh, this joke isn't up to par with the rest of them anymore. But I think my biggest thing is I'm hoping to headline in 2020. And then also, I don't know, because this is such a one-shot thing, but FPIA I'm hoping to do better than I've never made it out of the prelims. I think it's the atmosphere always freaks me out. I go into it knowing that it's not a fun show, that it's a competition, and then I don't have as much fun on stage. And that's something that I've been working on the last 9 months or so, is getting on stage and just making sure that I'm having fun. Because if I'm not having fun, what's the point in doing this? Then it's just a side job. So that's been my real focus lately, is if I'm getting on stage, I want to have fun on stage. So I'm hoping to just be happy with my performance at FPIA this year. That's all I have to say. So, I'm not saying I want to make it out of the first round. I'm just saying I want to be happy with it. Right. I have not been happy. Last year I got off stage and was immediately pissed off. And no. I just, you know what level you can work to. And when you're in such a big audience and you don't take advantage of, or not that you don't take advantage of it, but you don't give them your full, or you don't do what you know you're capable of. Yeah. It's disappointing whether or not you move on or not. It's just, I knew like, that's not what I am. That's not what I'm normally like on stage. I was nervous and I was so worried about the competition aspect, and I didn't even think about the audience. So, okay. That is my goal, and that's what I've definitely been working on. So, having fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it is cool. A lot of people say, when am I ever going to have a chance to perform in front of 200 plus people? Mm-hmm. And for them, that's really exciting. Yeah. And whether they advance or not, to them, it's like, what a cool opportunity that I'm getting, and I am going to have fun. I mean, if I can dispense some maternal advice, please. You've got to have fun.
Yes.
You have to have fun.
Yeah.
And, that stage fright thing can kick people in the ass sometimes. And it's so hard to control that because when you're early on in your career, being in front of that many people, you don't get that many chances. Exactly. So you have no idea that stage fright is about to bite you in the ass.
Yeah. Yeah.
But,
and I think, and that's when it was after FPIA last year where I was like, I need to focus on having fun and not on, and it's helped. I've seen where it's helped me so much. I've been able to go in front of audiences that are not laughing for anybody else. And I go up there and I can have fun and I can do great. So, but I also did the, year in review show this year at the end of last year. Yeah. And, I got to cap and I immediately got very nervous and anxious. And I said, this makes me feel like it's FPIA because there's a lot of comics here and we're going to be on the main stage. And I had to like calm myself down and be like, just go up and have fun. And it was great. I had such a great time. So I'm also glad that I was able to do that just to get it out of my system and be like, all right, it's going to be.
That's great awareness and realization and then the ability to say, all right, I hear you. Mr. or Mrs. Panicked voice and reaction there, but we can do this. Yeah. We've got experience hosting Playpen and hosting this other show, and go away for now. Yeah. Just let me go have my fun.
Like let me just have my few minutes on there and then you can panic again. Yeah. So it's funny because, newer comics don't understand that. Mm-hmm. Even after a few years of doing this, you can still have those freak out moments of, this is because there are other people who were there that night who were also like, I'm really nervous about this. And I was like, yeah, it's because this is just like FPIA. And so, it's going up there and just thinking solely about the audience. And so that's what I've started to. And I realized when I had first started doing comedy, that was something that got into my head too, because I was always nervous about what the other comics thought of me and what they thought, like, oh, she's not funny or, things. And I was so nervous on like them being like, she's been working on this joke for 3 weeks. I've heard her say it. And well, first of all, you get to a point where you realize that comics are not listening to you anyways.
Yeah.
Unless it's me, no one's paying attention. And, so that eases up a little bit. But again, once you realize that your focus is not on the comics in the room, it's on the audience and making them laugh and making sure that they're having a good time. And if you aren't having a good time, they certainly will not have a good time. Right. So they're based off of like your feedback. And that was one of those things that I had observed people and I was like, oh, these jokes are really funny, but they just seem very nervous and unsure of themselves up there. And that's why it seems like it's not working out. And so, it's been good to just watch people, which sounds so creepy, but,
You're doing homework.
Yeah, exactly.
Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you want to promote, talk about? I mean, we'll have a promotion section later, but is there anything that you wanted to talk about that we haven't covered?
I'm trying to think. I feel like we've covered probably what we need to. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I don't think so. Yeah. Okay. I think you've done a thorough job of getting everything out of me.
Okay, you're good. You're good. Well, are you ready for your closing question?
I am.
Okay. Did you rehearse? Did you
Of course
think about
I did.
this?
Of course
you did.
Well, because once you asked me to be on, then I was in Thailand and I was sitting by the pool and I had nothing to do, so I was listening to.
We have a listener in Thailand.
Yeah, so I listened to a few people's. So I am. I have prepared.
Okay. Very good. One word to describe your future.
Okay, I'm gonna say patience.
Okay.
I think
like most people, it's like silent.
I told you I have prepared. It was a long flight back home. Okay, I had plenty of time to think about this. Yeah, I'm gonna say patience. I think that a lot of people get started with comedy and they want things immediately.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're wondering why they're not getting booked on shows right away. And, you know, they want to start their own show or they want to start their own open mic immediately, which I think it's great for people to start their own shows and open mics. Obviously, we need more open mics in this town, obviously. And no. Sometimes we do though. Sometimes too many people are showing up to them. So every open mic has to cap their list. So we actually probably could use more open mics.
Free open mics.
Free open mics. Gosh. Yeah. Oh man. But I've always sort of just waited until I feel I would rather be more than ready for an opportunity than to do it too soon. So After Party, I had the idea for After Party almost immediately and I sat on it for like 2 years until I did anything about it because I wanted to make sure that I was ready and I wanted to make sure that it was going to be good and I was going to be good and I was prepared. And that was also when I had started it, you know, I asked around and I asked people, how do you promote your show? What do you do? You know, what do I need to know? And so that was really helpful for me. But yeah, patience. I think that, I'm coming up on 3 years of comedy, which is baby years in comedy. And, you know, a lot of people are like, why aren't I on tour yet? Why?
Oh my God.
Why haven't I? Not me, but especially people who don't do comedy will be like, oh, is this your full-time job? And I'm like,
yeah, right.
Okay. I'm losing money doing this. So yeah, it's funny on other people's perspectives, but I just think patience. I want to do something that's creative and something, where I could use my humor would be great, but I'm open to any possibilities. And I'm also realized that good things come to those who wait. And I would hate to, you know, if somebody had told me a year ago that I could headline something, I would have had the material for it, but I wouldn't have been as good as I am right now. Cause right now, like when you ask, what do I want to do in 2020? I'm confident that I could headline something and I could kill it. So, yeah, that's patience. I just think, you know, some people want things immediately and if you wait, you'll be even better. So that's my future.
That's wisdom too.
So when I'm like 50, maybe I'll finally make a career out of some of this.
Maybe sooner.
I'll cross my fingers. Hopefully, but.
All right. Fantastic. Well, that is a wrap on Comedy Wham presents Megan Tucei. Megan, tell us where we can find you on social media and tell us, promote the shows.
Okay. Well, so I host Playpen every Tuesday at 8 at Fallout Theater. It's BYOB, brand new jokes always, especially from me. So if you want to see someone bomb, I'll be there. And I also host After Party the first Friday of every month, also at Fallout Theater at 11:30 at night. It is fun. Please come. It is not BYOB, but if you sneak it in, I'm not going to say anything. I don't care. So, and then you can find me on Instagram. It's the longest name in the history of Instagram.
It's so cute.
It's Tucei in the sky with diamonds. And I refuse to change it. So you can give me all the crap you want about how long it is. I know you wouldn't, Valerie.
No,
but
I would not. No.
People I'm speaking to in this empty space, I will keep it out of spite.
Oh no, she's getting vicious.
This is me mad. So, yeah, and please do not find me on Facebook unless I know you. I've had too many problems with strangers on Facebook.
Oh boy.
So you can find me on
Instagram.
On Instagram.
We hope you've enjoyed learning about how Megan got to be the comedic genius that you heard today just as much as I have. This has been Comedy Wham! Presents Megan Tucei. I'm Valerie, and that's been funny. Thank you, Megan.
Thank you so much.